Yeah, welcome very much to Conversation. It's a pleasure for me to a dear couple, a friend of mine and of the world, and that's Ardesshir and Eleanor Ommani. And Ommani's welcome very much to Conversations here on the 5th of September of the year 2013 to talk about the world situation with a particular emphasis, as is appropriate of you, being Iranian and the wife of an Iranian, in this particular period of all the world focusing on Syria and matters like in the Middle East. And welcome so much. It's so good to see you. It's been far too long. Welcome to MNN.
We thank you, Harold, very much for thinking of us and asking us to come on the program.
Well, I don't know anyone who understands things as well about the Middle East. Well, I would say Iran, but also the Middle East, because Iran is most decidedly part of the calculus of what's going on now in Syria. I think we could agree on that. But Ardesshir Ommani and his lovely wife Eleanor probably understand Iran better than anybody else. They're co-founders of the American-Iranian Friendship Society, or Iranian Community. And they've been involved in that country. And maybe we could take just a couple of minutes or so. You were originally from Iran some time back, and you've been interested in the politics of that part of the world in a very deep and meaningful way for quite a long time now, Ardesshir, right?
Every Iranian is a politician.
Is that true? Yeah?
They all talk politics.
They do? Okay.
Yeah, dinner, events, social events, they all talk politics. And I came here to the United States like 50 years ago.
Right, 50, that's an anniversary, like, yeah.
That's right, going to 51. And went to school, got degrees in mathematics, in political economy, doctoral candidates in political economy. And, but I spent a lot of my time struggling for peace.
Struggling for peace. Yeah.
That's correct. And stopping the wars of the United States. And this has been with me, and I think it's going to be with me until I die, to expose the U.S. aggression against all the other nations, against progress, against socialism, against workers, against humanity in general.
Okay.
So that's what I've done. And Mr. Channer, you're a great man.
Well,
thank you for inviting me.
My mother would agree with you, I think. I'm not sure, but she's passed now, so I can't check. But I think my mother might agree. I'm not sure the rest of the world.
Many other
I'll
people
accept it.
Yes, thank you, sir.
And I'll say the same about you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we could go into great depth. We've done it on other programs. We've done a program with you years ago where you laid out almost a deck and the whole history of Iran and what a rich culture it is, 5,000 years and so forth, and the uniqueness of it. And we're now talking on the 5th of September 2013, and all the world is looking at the situation in Syria with the situation there. So you must have some thoughts about that.
Eleanor and I got acquainted 34 years ago during the protest against the Vietnam War.
Yes, all right.
And she's been with me, with us, with the movement, and she has contributed greatly, and she does every day and night today.
You'd be lost without Eleanor, I believe. I think you'd be a ship on the sea without the steering of Eleanor in your steering your ship of state.
Okay,
I'm just saying.
That's
Eleanor,
true.
You make a great couple and a great team.
Thank you.
Right.
Eleanor, you want to say something about?
Yes, before I wanted to tell you about the paper that we picked up as we came down to the city.
On this very day?
On this very day.
Okay, fine.
And but just to tell you that recently we were in Iran, we were there from April 24th until June 7th, actually June 2nd, and then we flew to Istanbul, and we were there and left there June 7th and returned to the United States. The situation in Iran has been difficult for the average citizen, the working people. The costs from the sanctions are terrific. Very high.
Horrendous.
Sanctions should be in somebody's category part of what would be a war crime.
Thank you.
The sanctions can be so
I talked to a
totally
woman in the
devastating.
street the other day, in the subway actually, and I was wearing a sign that U.S. NATO wars, the roots of unemployment, stop the wars in Africa and Middle East. And the woman said, well, that's a good sign, but she goes, but you know, having sanctions, it's better than war. And I said, sanctions are a form of war. I agree with you.
And they could be a war crime.
Right. And you know, sanctions are against Syria also.
Yes,
very
that's
much
right.
so.
Or they
But-
had sanctions against Libya, or that's something in the, wasn't it Madeleine Albright who was on
Yeah.
Leslie Stahl? And there was something on the order of 500,000 children
Who died.
had died from the result of sanctions
Yes.
that were imposed upon Iraq. 500,000.
Yes,
And then what did she
500,000.
say about
Stahl, she said, isn't that make something? Was it necessary? And she turned to the camera and said, well, it's a terrible thing, but it was necessary.
But it was
500,000
worth
children
it.
died from the sanctions
I know.
without the
And
bombing.
she made that comment that it was worth
and
it.
it's true.
It was worth it.
Yeah, right.
500
Okay. Anyway, yeah, they've been
Okay.
suffering in Iran for that, right?
Yes, and
Okay.
all right. So Hild, I'm gonna.
you got a headline,
Yeah, I
right?
got a headline here.
Let's see. Where can we
I'm
best
not
hold? Oh,
sure.
she's got it. They've got it.
Oh,
Go ahead.
good.
Just hold
Okay.
it.
Well,
Just hold it
this
to
is
this camera, dear.
okay.
Financial Times.
Yes,
right?
it's the Financial Times.
No,
The-
hold it long enough so
Oh.
they can come in on it, honey.
Sorry.
That's it. Yeah, they'll come in on it.
Oh, you can see it
Well,
better.
they can see it. It's,
Good.
Obama says the world has to act over Syria. Okay, that's
Correct.
the headline. I can't
That's the
read
headline.
small
That's the
print.
topic of our discussion today.
Yeah,
And this
exactly.
is today's paper, September 5th, 2013. The average working class person in America doesn't get the Financial Times
No.
because it's expensive.
Yeah.
Because my husband is a political economist, we do subscribe. We spend that extra money.
Yeah.
And we get a little bit more information, believe it or not, than we do from the American media.
Oh, well, I should think so,
Which is
yeah.
the free media. That's what we're always told. But that headline, Obama says the world has to act. They're talking about the G20 tensions. This is the subheadline, as Putin accuses the U.S. of lying. And I said, oh my goodness. All right. It says that their hopes that they would have this nice, calm meeting at the G20.
Lying about what?
Well,
Let her read. Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
Vladimir Putin. I'm going to read it
You
exactly.
should learn not to interrupt, Ardesshir. It's just a little hint. It's only 40 years or so, but anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Vladimir Putin accused the U.S. of lying about the Syrian rebels. Quote, they are sanctioning aggression because anything that is beyond the UN Security Council framework, except self-defense, is aggression, end quote, Russian president said on the eve of the summit in St. Petersburg.
Right.
Mr. Obama's request in front of the U.S. Congress that it authorize a limited strike on Syria's chemical weapons was a very shocking thing that he said in front of the entire world and in front of us, the American people, who he should be accountable to, but is not. He said that he expected Congress to approve the military action, but he reserved the right as president to act in the U.S. national interest, which means that if he didn't get the votes that he wants in Congress, he could decide to bring war against the Syrian people unilaterally, with no, no legal sanction, no congressional approval. And the last thing I want to say, and I'm sorry that it's taking a while, but I'll read it fast. Mr. Putin, meanwhile, said, and I agree with Mr. Putin,
Okay.
Mr. Kerry had misled Congress earlier in the week by denying that al-Qaeda fighters were playing a larger role in rebel groups. It was one of the questions Kerry was asked in the congressional hearings. Quote, this is what Putin said. As a matter of fact, the principal combative unit acting in Syria now is the so-called Jabhat al-Nusra, which is an al-Qaeda unit, Mr. Putin said. And they know this. And he is telling an outright lie, and he knows that he is lying.
Wow.
End quote.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, and then also that calls up. I can remember a couple years ago when they were getting ready to bomb and kill Muammar Gaddafi, that they wanted to get some. The War Powers Act requires that before you go to war, it has to be declared by Congress, and they just bypassed it and signed up with. And they're wanting to try and do the same thing again
And again, under the bogus, I'm sorry, Harold, you said not to interrupt, but under the bogus.
No, I meant him not to interrupt you.
No,
You
I
can
know.
interrupt him.
No,
That's the way
no.
I think.
Under the bogus.
Really?
A little friendly advice.
Under the bogus lie
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
it's a humanitarian intervention. When you bomb people, that's humanitarian.
Yeah.
Look at Libya today.
Yeah, I know, it's a
And look-
mess, it's a mess.
and
We're
Syria's
doing some
really-
other programming out of archive this week about that issue
Good.
and so forth.
Okay.
And I think that ties into something you were telling me about. There was a couple of things you want to get across in this program, one of which is lies.
Lies.
Lies,
A
lies,
century of
lies,
lies.
Yeah.
The United States has lied about everything that is happening and what the United States is doing. I ventured spending some time and classified classified the lies of the U.S. government.
Wait a minute, that'd be a big book. That would be a very big book
This
you
is
got
just the
there, Mr.
beginning.
Gibbons.
Probably
Yeah.
it's a project for the next 10 years. Lie number one. It
In
says,
the order of their importance?
No.
yes.
Oh, not chronological.
almost,
they're not.
almost.
It's
Oh, all right.
Lie number one, it says that it respects the United States Constitution.
Okay.
I do not believe that the government of the United States respects Constitution, especially if in the Constitution does not say that killing and assassinations of the leaders of other countries is
It's a war crime.
is
That's right.
Is
is
forbidden.
legitimate
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
Constitution.
Yeah.
It doesn't say
It
that.
doesn't say
And if
that.
it doesn't
And yet
say
it-
that, then the ruling class of the United States is
Not to
lying.
mention
with respect-
500 children for just sanctions alone in Iraq. 500,000.
500,000.
Yeah.
Lie number two, that the extensive police security forces are for the protection of the rights of the U.S. population.
Rights of the U.S. population in wars in other countries.
Yeah, that
Hard to
take. Uns.
by
Hard to
killing
uns,
by
yeah.
killing other people
And,
in other nations, the rights of the people of the United States is preserved, and this is a big lie, because Edward Snowden especially revealed, exposed the anti-constitutional activities of the United States
Their national security
with respect
agency,
to national
I
security.
think he's a hero in the world.
Thank you.
By and large, and I
Thank
think
you.
Mr. Putin's word reflect a lot of people's thinking, and also certainly a lot of people's thinking in terms of the proposed military action that the United States is contemplating now is based upon a situation that is not at all in the interest of this country. The world is against that very largely, it seems
Agreed.
to me, except the political class in our
In
country and a
Washington.
few around the world.
I hate
yeah.
to cut you off.
Yeah.
Lie number three.
Yeah,
That the
Yeah,
United
but that list
States-
goes on. I mean, you're talking about the lies of the United States of America.
Yes, yes.
That's going to take the whole hour,
That
2
the
hours,
U.S.
20
respects
hours.
the sovereignty and the rights of independence of other nations. I do not think that the United States take a look at the list of invasions. How could you respect the sovereignty of other nations and at the same time willfully invade other countries
Or
and
drop
bring
drone
troops
bombs,
in
missiles.
and kill those people
Or
in the name,
impose sanctions again.
or put sanctions against?
I consider that.
we
a
have
Lie
to
number
drop what we
4,
have.
that it respects the principle of non-interference and non-aggression
Sorry.
in its policy with respect to
True.
other countries. Take a look at the list of wars imposed by the United States on other nations.
Well,
Just
there's
mention
rather
a
a
few.
long list. But isn't it true that nations have warred against nation? It's not only the United States that has done that. Virtually all of the empires that have existed, I think perhaps with the exception of Iran, I don't think they've ever attacked in what, 500
The
years
number
or something?
matters.
Yeah.
The number
Okay,
matters.
the quantitative
If,
measure,
yes,
yeah.
the quantity matters,
Yeah,
the frequency
Mathematics.
matters. If in a century The United States has gone into war in 100 countries. And
Is it that many? Really?
Oh, yes.
It is.
Okay.
Invasions
It is, yes.
and overthrows.
Unbelievable.
That's war. That's a war-like activity,
right.
but it's called
It's
peace
different
action
from-
or
It's
something.
called
like
saving
that.
It's different
someone,
from, let's say, a nation of Puerto Rico that has not gone into, or people of Puerto Rico, or people of Cuba have not imposed wars on other countries.
Nor, incidentally, has the nation of Iran. For about
Thank
500
you.
years, they've never attacked.
And
have they? Is
Syria.
that not correct? You spell,
And Syria,
Can you
they're-
spell that out? That is the case. They've had a long, long time of not imposing their military
Yeah,
might
in the
on
last
others.
300 years,
300 years, they've
400
not
years,
ever invaded
Iran has
another
not
country.
invaded.
That's for the record.
That's correct.
That's a big
It's
difference
historically
between hundreds
correct.
of times for us,
Even
yeah.
the bourgeois
I mean, that's
historians
worth
have to
bringing
admit
up, don't you
that.
think? Yeah.
Line number 5,
Lie number 5. Here
that
we
the
go.
United
It's a list of
States
lies.
is democratic
Huh.
in its handling of elections in the country. I do not consider the United States is behaving democratically when
The
the
vessel.
corporations can input hundreds of millions of dollars, perverting really the rights of other people.
And the
One
vote.
corporation.
What are you okay, go ahead.
What
spell
am
it
I
out.
talking about?
Yeah.
I'm saying that if a corporation like General Electric, General Motor, and other big gigantic corporations, they can pour millions of dollars into the coffers of the Democratic and the Republican Party
Yeah.
to saturate the media in the interest of a small group.
Right.
That is not democratic. I have one right. They can buy, through that money, practically they are buying millions of votes.
And they write
Best
up.
Congress money can buy. Best
That's
government
correct.
money can buy was passed or
The United States is one
country.
country that the government outright, very blatantly, the capitalist class buys the
Is it?
elections.
Your list is very, very long. Your list is long. It will be endless. I mean,
Yeah.
I can think of so many. If we go to individual incidences and everything,
Maybe.
wasn't it the case with Britain when they ruled the waves, and wasn't it the case with Rome when they ruled the Mediterranean and empires and James Joyce had Daedalus say in history is a nightmare from which I'm attempting to awaken. Isn't it? I mean, you're not trying to set up a thing about perfect good people, but the history of the world is one of the strength and the powerful ruling over the weak and the not powerful, is it not? In
It
virtually
is
all of the
generalization,
world.
but exactly we are fighting against that kind of perversion of democracy. Either we have democracy or if you don't.
Well-
if we don't have democracy and it's a jungle,
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
animals eat other animals,
Yeah.
then we have to close down this facade of communications in the United States that we have democracy is a great nation on earth and the Constitution is the best Constitution. What are these?
Well, they
It's
think
worth
they've got
nothing.
they think they have a pattern that's good for all the world, and they're wanting to impose that. And to a certain degree, they're backed up by the fact that they have tremendous weapons that can give them supposed political legitimacy.
Oh,
What backs
legitimacy.
up political legitimacy throughout history is the weapons to back it up. To conquer
Okay.
the other
call
tribe,
that-
and then they can
So,
say
but-
we're
but
politically
that is
enforced.
force.
Call
It's the
that-
guns that make
I
them
know,
politically
but the
enforced.
Iranians call
Good.
that
I accept
hegemony.
this.
Okay, yeah,
I accept this.
realpolitik, not
But
some idealism.
The United States has been the purveyor of force, aggression, war, and mass killing.
And you know who
it's an
called-
exception. America is an exception.
Really,
Is-
you have it that strong?
Oh,
right?
yes.
Martin Luther King said it.
Uh-huh.
That's one of the reasons he was...
In 67 he
yes,
did, didn't he?
very
Came
good.
right
He
out
said
and
it's
said
the
Riverside
greatest,
Church, yeah.
America is the greatest purveyor of violence in the world.
Well, we were
He
the
said
most
that
powerful.
then.
The more powerful you
But
become,
how
the
many
more
wars
you can...
have we had since then?
Well-
Since the Vietnam War?
If power is for aggression or is achieved through aggression,
Oh.
then that power is damned. I don't think the people of the world would just sit down and let the United States to walk over them, kill them,
Well, you don't? You haven't read history? Or it seems to me that's the history of the world. One group being able to have advantage, they got a club, and they can go hit the other people on the head, and then it gets modulated with a PR and opinion and culture.
This fatalism that you express.
But it's the realpolitik. Whoever's got the gun rules.
This fatalism that you express.
Yeah. Well, it's realpolitik.
Does not match my.
You study political economy.
I did study political economy.
So you know about.
But we have also.
Be realistic.
Yeah, I am realistic.
Okay.
I am advocating that the oppressed people, the people of poor people around the world, or in the United States, the working class should stand up to this bullies in the Congress.
I got a really good information from a mutual friend of ours, Sarah Flounder.
Oh.
Sarah's great. The International Action Center is a great thing. Ramsey Clark's a great American hero.
Wonderful American.
But she informed me that
Attorney General.
she informed me with authority, she had chapter and verse, that the disparity of wealth in the United States of America now is greater than it was in 1789 France.
That is correct.
Does it mean anything to you, sir?
Well, yes,
it does.
Yeah.
Should it be stopped or not?
Should it be what?
Should this process be stopped?
Definitely.
Okay. Should we organize against the dictatorship of a small class of capitalists, imperialists?
Well, perhaps. Yeah, it has to be addressed.
Do we have the right to do that according to the Constitution?
I'm not thinking of the Constitution is being breached. The War Powers Act it has no thing. They can go and do it executive. They can do an executive action. They get by the Congress and they get by the UN and the other systems of international law.
Do you think we have citizens of the United States have equal rights before the law?
No, I wouldn't say so. Money talks.
Money talks.
Money talks. But as always, it has. In every political entity. The power.
By generalizing and abstracting something, no problem could be solved. Every problem is damned. You have to leave it to the angels and gods to come to your help. I am saying, first of all, there is relativity involved.
There's what?
Relativity.
Relativity?
Yes.
Yeah.
Means one nation is violating, in the war today, is violating the rights of the whole planet. And while millions of other people on the other side have no power to change the events.
Right.
I am saying that we should organize the people of the oppressed, and those who have been denied any kind of rights.
That's the vast majority of humanity.
As a political...
Am I saying something wrong?
No, you're...
But as a political economist, may I ask you this? In history, are there examples where oppressed people have confronted the military dictatorships, the powers that be, the wealthy, and help? And are there cases today, living cases, where the gap that Harold said, the gap between the a small, tiny 1% at the top,
class, right.
and the majority, that gap is huge.
Yeah.
In those countries, have they reduced that gap?
20th century has witnessed many examples.
Really?
Many examples.
And mostly they were overthrown.
Many examples that the oppressed has risen, has organized, and has stopped the aggressors. The best example, look at the struggle of the Chinese people, 1.3 billion people that drove out the Japanese aggressors and established a more prosperous, a better society. Look at the Russian
Could you
Revolution.
imagine us taking care of 3 billion?
1.3 billion
human beings, and not that it's perfect in China. You know, a lot of anti-communist, anti-socialist people.
But you got 1 billion.
But look at what they did. If we had that many people, we're not taking care of a huge percentage of 430.
That's not my point. You asked the question, and I'm answering that question. The question is the Korean people. Kim Il-sung organized the people of Korea against the U.S. aggression, and it stopped it at least halfway. Okay, Iran, the United States established the Shah dictatorships, and what did we do? We didn't sit down and say and hypothesize that you know, the world
us
has
a
been
little
like
more.
this, and it's going to be like this, and you can't do anything about it, and it's useless to even talk about it. No. When I was a student in college or even high school, I started contacting, organizing against the regime of the Shah. When I came to the United States, for at least 20 years, I organized Iranian students, American students, SDS, Workers' World Party, and all that in order to get rid of the puppet of the United States. United States is a big bully, okay? So we have to
He
stop
looks
it.
my way.
We have to stop it now, because it is reaching a point
Yes.
that the United States itself
frightening.
is feeling that cannot be the police of the world.
Well, that's an interesting point to bring up now, because I'm not at all sure like Britain ruled the waves, and they truly did.
Yes.
You know, they had an empire in which the sun never set, and that sort of thing, and everything. And the United States inherited that after the Second World War, that mantle. Now they got a military force that is just everywhere in the world and so forth. But I don't think their writ runs as surely as it has in the more immediate past, and I think it's being questioned. You've got this instance of Syria. You've got the entire Arabic world totally against the idea that Mr. Obama's proposed.
Except Saudi Arabia.
Well, Saudi Arabia, that's another issue. But you got Russia, and you have China, and there's no chance of
Yeah,
getting anything
Venezuela.
past
And
the
Iran.
Security
And
Council.
Korea.
Well, yeah, right.
And Venezuela, and, Chile,
and Chile,
Brazil. They are
and
not for
don't
bombing.
forget Evo Morales in Bolivia.
Oh,
And,
thank
but
you.
the thing is that the power structure is they're not able to assert the military power as much as they might like to directly. And I think it's being questioned by world opinion, which
Good.
might be a positive sign that they're being reined in terms of their ability to do mischief around the world.
All this confusion
Maybe.
in
No,
the
you-
Congress,
I agree.
the confusion in the Congress, and saying contradictory things, pulling back and forth. We're gonna hit Syria. We are not gonna hit Syria. We are not gonna have foot soldiers on Syrian soil. It shows the crack, the deep
you're
crack
talking about.
within the power structure of the United States.
Well, there was that. You said you hit the ground running when you hit the country by being against the Vietnam War. All this nation finally came to realize that that was based upon a big falsehood, the Gulf
Right.
conflict and all that, and that the geopolitical strategy, George Kennan and all that about communism was coming out like a big amoeba out of the Eurasian landmass, and they had to be stopped and all of that. They finally realized it, much to the chagrin of the political class, and we had to turn tail and run. We lost in
That's
Vietnam.
right.
We lost the war because we were on the wrong side of reading geopolitical reality,
Harold.
right?
No,
happened in
it's
other
the interest
cases.
of the United States acted according to the interest of the capitalist imperialist
Well,
class.
there you go. Now, when
Yeah.
you say the national interest is, should we just say the national interest equals the interest of the plutocratic class and let it go at
No,
that?
sir.
No?
No, sir.
No?
The national interest of the United States
No, but-
goes far beyond the interest of a small minority
You
in
think
this
it
country.
does?
Oh, yes. This land is not solely the land of the corporations. This land
No, they are the
belongs-
political class. I'm sorry, I'm making a kind of a sick joke, yeah. but, there are some
and it's very
politicians in
obvious.
that
What
camp.
I want to finish this part
This list of the
thing,
evil, of the,
that
Well,
a tremendous progress has been made by the labeling classes of the world
Okay.
against the warmongers and against and today when you see that the senators of the United States are shouting in the dark that if we don't kill them, they're gonna come and kill us. Which
who's
is a-
them and us?
them is the
them-
rest of the world.
The rest of the world.
Exception
Okay.
of Saudi Arabia and
it's not the
Yeah.
rest of the world. They say that, well, okay.
Okay.
Well,
You can
the
formulate
G20
your
just
own-
met, and you got a thing out
Well-
of the Financial Times with Mr. Putin seriously calling the United States a liar.
That's correct.
I mean, that's a
That's a
mighty
very,
country that's
very-
saying that. And
That's
that
a new
kind of thing.
phenomenon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
a new
This
phenomenon.
could not be said.
And he granted
Gorbachev.
asylum to Mr. Assange.
To
or Mr.
Snowden.
Yeah.
Right, that
and
was
that also was a
an
thrown
important
inside of the United States' assumption of overwhelming power and able to impose themselves like Rome did for 1,000 years in the Mediterranean. Jesus had objection to that.
Lies
and so
on
did
the
Spartacus.
Wait,
Yes,
may I interject
Yes.
something?
By all means, bring in
Thank
some
you.
more
Well, I just,
considered wisdom.
this came in my email again just before, let me see, it was actually 3:04:38 p.m.
Okay.
today, September 5th. And it is from some former veterans that were in Vietnam that are anti-war.
Yeah.
And it says, good and sensible statement, but I can hear warmongers carry an Obama saying, legality, schmegality. This administration is heading right up there with the other historic war criminal nations in history, thanks to all those liberal white people who, mostly out of guilt as well as blacks, out of racial naivete, voted for Obama. He's a disgrace, and so is Congress. Now this, I don't know this man personally, but he signed it, David, but I want to point out, the National Lawyers Guild came out opposing military action, and the statement is enclosed. It's a beautiful statement.
Yeah.
But more important than that, when
Yeah.
Ardesshir was talking about the reaction of the nation and the people of this nation, not that small class that's controlling the military and the power, Obama had to cancel his meeting with the AFL-CIO, the labor representatives, which have always voted for the guy. I mean, they organized their union.
Democratic Party.
In Los Angeles, it's coming up Monday. Of course, his excuse is that, you know, there's such an important vote that's going to go on in the Congress. And by the way, a delegation of Russian diplomats requested through the foreign ministries and the protocols that they do, we would like to come to the United States to address the Congress on this burning question of war and peace and attacking Syria. They said, we don't want you to come here. And we're
Now,
not
who
gonna-"
was it that wanted to come? I'm sorry, I missed it. In
The Russian, you know, every country can bring a delegation. They bring
to what? To what? I'm
to
sorry.
Congress. To this coming Monday's hearings on whether the
I
United
see.
States
Okay.
should go to war.
Okay.
Yes, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
there's
fine. Yeah.
public hearings and there's Congress is going to be meeting to
yeah.
vote on this.
Uh-huh.
And countries all the time come here. I mean, delegations and lobbyists come from all over the world, but
Yeah, I don't know how
they
those-
didn't want to, the Congress said, we don't want to hear from the Russians. We don't want to give permission to any Russian people or delegations. Why not? They're not the ones who are threatening to go bomb us or Syria or China or Africa. Tell me that that is what the situation is? No, it's not. So why is their voice, my question is, why is their voice being suppressed?
Well, I
Because
don't
as
know.
Ardesshir said, the working people,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
have needs and wants,
Yeah.
but we yet do not have the political power because of this monopoly at the top.
Yeah, you don't have it. I don't know how it's decided who come to those kind of things called by the Congress.
Well, the
and
Congress,
so on.
the State Department makes a determination.
Well, I don't know how it's determined,
There are
but I don't
different levels
think
of discussions.
if you're in war with something, you wouldn't want a bunch of Nazis coming here in 1930 or 43
But
in
are the
order to have
Russians
a
today,
say
are the
against us,
Nazis?
you know.
But the
You
Russians,
understand what I'm saying? They wouldn't
No,
want to invite the
let's
enemy
make
into
this
your
clear.
camp.
Russia's not threatening the
excuse me.
United States.
Is Russian government is a
lively
Nazi
talk
government?
today.
No. I'm
Okay,
just saying
if
they're
it's
not going
not-
to invite the so-called enemy in their way of thinking.
Who's the enemy?
The enemy would be who's against them.
Oh,
In their thinking.
in other
Oh, in
words,
other words-
whatever the United States says and points at and says this is the enemy, that is really the enemy of the United
That's
States.
what other lobbyists are telling them to do, and that's the way
what
they
about
get
people?
reelected.
What about us?
That's the
What
way
about-
they
what
get
about
reelected, more or
the
less, right?
68%
Are the Russians my enemy?
that are against this?
I'm sorry, what?
What about the 68% that every U.S. media, all the
I
world
know
media has it?
it's presented right on the established media. 68% of the
right.
American people
Are
are against
opposed to it,
but that
we don't
doesn't
count.
matter.
We don't count.
Yeah, more or less that's the case.
I'm sorry.
That's the case. That's
because
more or
they have
less
the
the case.
dictatorship. So let's
Because they
declare
have-
the
they
United
have-
States is not a democratic country.
Well, I think that's fair to say, particularly economically. And the two are joined at the hip, but politically there is some remnant of the rule law. It's got to be
Yes.
reinterpreted, and
Yes.
it's interpreted in various ways. But economically, we're not. And then they do not. More importantly,
Harold, I'm
they do
sorry.
not have a political vision that is relevant to the future. They do not have. They have reified institutions, outdated in time as things become outdated, and they have a system in order, and they think they have a system that's good for the universe or universal time, and they don't, and they're being threatened at a very level of inadequacy in terms of the emerging future. That I would say,
I would
of
say
the country. It's too
the
bad.
United States ruling class knows it's lying.
Well, lying is a strong term. They may believe it. They might actually believe that
The
they
liar
do.
believes that he is lying,
Yeah,
or what?
I think there's a case to be made
No,
for
it's
people who
proven.
are. No, I think there's a case to be made for the fact that they really think that if they just get a few more billionaires and a few more chances at hitting the lottery in terms of hitting some big new something or other, that they can save the world. If only the world
They
would listen
believe
to-
that they can
Save.
serve the world
Yeah.
by
Save? He
dropping
said
bombs
save.
on the Vietnamese
Well,
people,
that's a necessary
the Ocean,
thing.
Cambodian,
No, but
Iranian.
I have to give it that they
Come
may.
on.
No, I'm saying I don't
I
think
mean,
that
like, common
I don't-
sense.
No, common sense.
Well,
Well,
let
I'm
me-
making a suggestion that's a little hard for me to understand, even. But I do think that there are people who will do evil thinking they're doing good, or will have a
Harold-
rationalized, or they will be co-opted to think that what they're doing
Let's
is
go
good.
into the brain
But-
of somebody who kills someone and says, "This is I'm doing something good."
Well-
What kind of person is that?
Well, you'd have to spell that out, Counselor, if you want
Well,
to give what the details
let me give
are,
you the
know.
example that we have concretely, that
Yeah.
everyone knows, and yet we have been unable to impeach Bush and Cheney.
Right.
When you say maybe they believed it, if you believe something, but you're telling the people there are weapons of mass destruction, and they made that poor black man, Colin Powell,
Yeah.
go in front of the World UN,
I
which...
remember it, yeah.
that this is the yellow
Did
cake.
he know
But
that he was lying?
they knew that because they faltered. They faked the intelligence. That's now history. A few people knew it, not a few, but people that have been in the political arena and have analyzed the politique, the real politique. Everyone knew it was a lie. All the research was even, I mean, I marched and he marched on lines with hundreds of thousands of Americans who were opposed to attacking Iraq.
Oh,
because
remember
we
the
knew.
demonstrations we had
Yeah.
here? Remember,
I'm
they
telling
filled the
you.
whole east side of
I
Manhattan.
know, and
all
they
the
said
streets were
several
full. I was
hundred or
marching in
several
that.
thousand. It was
Yeah.
like 200,000.
There was more than that even. Yeah, it was
Okay.
huge.
All
Yeah.
right, so-
The United
But
States
I'm
has
just making a case that there are people who will delude themselves, even.
Okay, but-
when they've got.
But if you know
when they're-
something is a
when
lie-
it's necessary. There's who was it who said it's very hard to get a man to understand some idea when his economic interests are or his eating is dependent upon him not understanding it. They can
His eating?
I'm just saying it's worse maybe
ruling
than,
class
than
has
somebody
so
who just
much
openly lies.
luxury and so much opulence that sometimes when there are children that die from lack of medicine, when we could
Or
provide
political
that.
power exerted by somebody with favors and that sort of thing.
And I
It's
don't
a-
think
it's
that
a-
man thought one day someone is going to turn his words against the vision that he had. He had a vision of equality.
Which man? You talking Mr. Obama?
I'm talking about Marx.
Marx, Karl Marx.
Right.
Okay, you like Karl Marx as a model.
Very much.
Okay, yes.
Very
I'm not a
much
Marxist, but that's
philosophical.
okay. Yeah.
that's okay. The State Department knows it. And the embassies in the Middle East know it. But the United States has the burden, and they know it, to
Had to.
prove that they are the friends of other people. And
And to prove that
dropping
capitalism can
bombs
resolve
on
economic
them
issues.
is a way of showing its friendship.
I can remember, I used to go to Washington a lot. When first I picked
You
up a
did, I
porta pack, I
remember,
was
I heard
young, I
that.
had hair, and I would be able to go down and do interviews in Washington. And I can remember then, it was in the 70s and so forth, and Paul Wolfowitz and those people that make up what they call the neocons,
Yes.
they were there. And they were thought of by everyone, the political class and such you'd run into and doing stuff and everything, as the lunatic fringe, that they were just so out of sorts. And he was saying then, we're going to have to invade This is Paul Wolf. Yeah, we're going to have to invade Iraq.
They did.
And they finally did.
They did.
Finally did. They finally prevailed. They believe in their heart of hearts that it's necessary for us to do that. And I think it's possible for them to
use
believe
the word
that.
believe. Believe.
Well, it's
You
an
see,
ideology.
There is something
Yeah, it's an
believe, and
ideology.
there is something called facts. If the facts contradicts the belief of the person should change the
Should
belief.
become rational. Say.
If the belief runs counter to the sense of humanity, for sense of progress, for human beings to be able to help each other, to flourish rather than turn into beasts, then the belief has to be changed.
What do you think should be, if I could, in terms of this thinking? We got about 15 minutes left only, okay?
Yes, sir.
So what from here, this is September 2003, what do you think are the possibilities for an alteration that could be entering into a new era of a steadily increasing degree of equality among the peoples and the environment of the world, which the future calls for, as opposed to what we've had throughout all of history? That I go back again to Daedalus having Shakespeare having Daedalus say, or James Joyce having say, history is a nightmare of just injustice, which has been characteristic of practically all of history, with a small group ruling over the masses while they wallowed around in the mud. What is needed in order for us to realize a more human
clarity?
Do you still think it's the words of 1848?
It is clarity that
Do you like the words of 1848 and the Marxist notion of what's needed, or uprising of the proletariat?
I'm answering your first question.
Okay.
Your first question is that human beings, if they're not clear, if they do not have clear understanding
I have a point.
of things, they cannot solve a problem of physics, chemistry, history, and literature, and so on and so forth. The first thing is that the United States, people of the United States, they have to realize that their government in Washington, the Department of War, the Department of State, the Department, all these departments that take the taxes of the United States and go to war, they are on a wrong track of history, and they have to be stopped. If this clarity exists, without clarity you cannot do anything.
How is that to be achieved? What is required for that to be achieved?
Once the consciousness of man takes hold, it energizes the man in the direction.
Consciousness or the conscience? Which?
Consciousness.
Consciousness.
Right.
Okay.
Not conscience.
Not conscience.
No.
Okay.
The consciousness of man turns into a physical force to stop all those people who have been engaged in waging wars, killing other people, perverting the budget.
But then conscience has something to do with that.
No? You can stop, or you can stay with that. I mean class consciousness, not
class.
Class consciousness.
Okay.
Consciousness of what the question is, and how to solve the problem.
May I use an example?
Sure.
Okay, Ardesshir had as one of his points line number 6.
Not line number 6.
I have to go back to
very long
that
list.
all Americans are equal before the law.
Yeah.
Well,
that's absurd.
and an American might say, "Well, no, that's true. That's true. We passed the laws. There's no longer slavery in the United States of America." How is it that in 2013, Mayor Bloomberg in this lovely city that we're sitting in right now was able to, tried to, use a police force, a national security force, to stop and frisk people of color to the point that it came, so... And they want... But guess why? Guess why they were confronted, and why a judge had to change, even though it's in the law, because according to the law, if you're going to practice that, if it's going to be real, as Ardesshir said, those oppressed people, those people who are being stopped, you and I don't get stopped, maybe once in a while. He gets stopped, he's a little darker. Be really black. You're going to get stopped.
Yeah, that's
okay, and you're going to get frisked. And you could be a child. And I've heard stories, and I've met the individuals who, when they were children with their book bags on their back, get shoved up against a wall for no reason but their color. So this lie number 6, that all Americans are equal before the law, it'd be great if it was working, but people who then don't get that practice correctly, they oppose. Okay, good.
Today,
I thought that was important.
No, you're right.
Is lying through their teeth
still there,
from the bottom to the mass media. The mass media, the right wing and the left wing and the middle wing, they're lying about this, that claiming that the Syrian government used the chemical substances, chemical
sarin gas. They said sarin gas
against its own people.
Yeah, that's
I
the
would
code
say
word.
this is the biggest lie of the century.
You do think, you have chapter and verse on from other sources that say that it would dispute that claim?
The United States has to prove the lie.
People are coming, increasingly, congressmen are coming out of the internal security apparatus of the country, intelligence agencies, who present them with evidence, and they come out saying, well, we can't display it.
Oh, no?
Because
if you can't, then
you're
lying.
Security interests of the nation.
No, then you're lying.
But they come out convinced
if
that
you
is the
cannot
case.
reproduce.
I know.
What if it is the case?
What
if it is?
What if is not? You go to war with these assumptions, this flimsy assumption that maybe it is.
65% of the people remember Iraq and that mess that we got into.
Yes,
exactly.
That's right.
I mean, we don't have to give history examples of 100 different examples to prove that these people lied. I mean, the people of the world know very well. Maybe the people of the United States do not.
65% of the people say they're just dead set against it.
Exactly.
Because they did learn.
So they have a PR
So I have no problem really assuming that the United States people know in their hearts.
You mean the leaders?
No, the people of the United States know deep in their hearts that the ruling class of the United States is a liar, is an aggressor, and is a killer. This, if they know, they have to come out, turn disbelief into a practical force, and face the United States government and bring them down, kick this hoodlums in the Congress, many of them, hoodlums in the Congress and in the Department of War and in the State Department, kick them out and have a real election. This is not an election that the corporations manage for the people of the United States. And I would like to emphasize that today we are sitting and in Pittsburgh, in Russia, the meeting is held. The United States is pressuring other nations to accept its lies that the government of Syria, Bashar al-Assad, as the president, has ordered and used. That is what John Kerry said, has been repeating in the last week.
Called him a thug and a murderer.
Called who is a thug and a murderer? I would say the president of the United States is a thug and a murderer. Why? Because they murder and they call other people murderer. This is like a thug on the street. We have, unfortunately, we have been pushed into using the same words that John Kerry and other people in the status quo use against the people of other countries.
May I give the concrete example?
How many times they have used this against the Palestinians? That the Palestinians are thugs and
terrorists.
the terrorist.
Well, stop and frisk is the basis of that. Yeah, let's say, and they want to make him, what's the guy, the police chief here? You want to make him
Kelly.
national security.
Kelly,
You want to make him the head of national security.
I signed a petition that I was against that.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Before
Yeah,
the time
yeah,
ends,
yeah.
I would like
And
to
I
say
have one
that the
example.
United States, in addition to this 2.5 million army that it has trained in the last 25 years terrorist groups.
Oh.
Terrorist groups located center of it, especially in
Middle East.
North
Asia.
Africa and the Middle East, using the unemployed population of Saudi Arabia, but more Pakistan and Afghanistan.
Even Libya.
Poor people
After
Yeah,
have
Gaddafi.
been,
people, yeah.
have been
After
trained
Gaddafi.
to go and put bombs in different countries, the countries that the United States doesn't like. This is the continuation of the U.S. fight against communism, against socialism, against a workers' state. It is on the periphery, it doesn't show like that they're really fighting communism because they have named it terrorism. They're fighting terrorism.
Right, well, okay, what about the people who argue that, well, there was, that's what the whole George Kennan view of geopolitics was, that we had a containment against communism because they were there in the Soviet Union, they went into China, and it was coming out, and the West had to contain communism.
Did it?
And then communism fell apart in 1989.
Communism?
It hasn't.
Has
Oh,
the
it
So-
hasn't. You think because it's in
It
Cuba and so
really
forth, it
hasn't.
still lives?
No, also
They
even
would
within
like
the
you to
Soviet.
believe that
Okay.
communism is not
I
a
mean-
force to reckon with.
Well, where is it a force, real
Oh,
serious force?
today,
What about
right
China?
now, right now.
Well, well,
You see,
you're
Who's
right.
running? Who's
Yeah.
running China?
I think
it's
that-
not. Yes, there's capitalists, big capitalists, and
Yeah,
there's gaps.
yeah.
But the Chinese Communist
20
Party,
20
they don't
million.
like to talk about that.
I know,
they
it's
don't like
funny,
to
they
use
got
that
Qigong.
word.
There's a thing where you can do Qigong, which is very healthy and everything.
Yes, yes.
And everything, and the Falun, and
Falun Gong.
the religion of China is Marxism.
Oh.
That's
I
their
know.
religion.
You
The
see-
new guy coming in, his area of expertise is dialectical materialism.
has been
and they
that
claim
since
to be
Mao.
doing a
Head of
communist.
the State
Since
It doesn't
Department,
look very much like
Kerry
a communist
made it
setting.
more clear.
I mean, you got 300 million people doing fairly well in Shanghai and Peking. That 1 billion people are in staggering poverty, for crying out loud. It doesn't look like communism to me.
I should thank Kerry.
And you've got, in communism would get rid of the private sector.
We don't have
That's
communism. We
centralization
don't have
of communism
communism.
and so on and so
Socialism
forth.
and capitalism
Today.
is a process.
Well, okay.
Today, I should say
I have.
thank you, Kerry, because Kerry said this is not just a fight against in Syria. It's a bigger fight. Yes, I know. We know that it's a bigger fight.
Okay.
The United States is losing face.
Well,
And
okay,
This dance that they've been doing in the last month or so to gain some momentum, to create some confusion on the part of the United
And to reassert its-
people of the world. But
its
the people of the
hegemony.
world don't get confused. It is the Americans who get confused first because they have interest in confusion and to be confused
The overall
and not paying
confused.
attention to what the atrocities that the government.
So what do you think is going to happen? Let's say we've got a couple of minutes left, really. What's going to happen in the weeks and months ahead vis-a-vis this question of Syria? Do you think we will end up having a military force
don't know.
directed against that country as it was in Libya and other places?
The United States
what is your
government-
thought about how this is going to, as they say,
The
wash
United
out?
States government may make the mistake because they have
a history of mistakes.
They have a history
Mistakes.
of mistakes.
Of
Well,
being
we've had some
belligerent.
successes, but
Yeah, we have.
No, not really. The United States has been down and not up. All these killings really has not been able to save American capitalism.
Well, okay,
Yeah.
okay. You think it's capitalism at its last legs or something like that, or something? You think? Yeah.
No, not a fatal, there's not a fatal statement,
Yeah.
but the United States, by going through wars, has depleted its own strength.
Oh, really?
I hope it continues.
Yeah.
And there would be a day where no more war could be fought by the United States Army. Today, even the Congress accepts, even Kerry accepts that this just making a strike in Syria is going to cost us $50 million. Okay, good.
More than
How come-
that.
Actually,
A
more than
billion.
that.
They said a
They would do
billion.
that on a weekend.
Yeah.
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 They said a billion.
Yeah.
$1
okay.
billion, sorry.
No, $500 million.
Oh, for
Okay.
one missile. Okay.
Not for one missile.
Oh,
Okay.
whatever. Sorry, we're getting
You-
mixed up
You bring
here.
your own accountant.
I'm not good at math.
I'm saying the United States has to be confronted.
What force, a collective force, would do it? Do you think there could be coming a force from the Islamic world that could challenge them in a way that would really be effective?
I don't think so. The Islamic world,
No, you don't think so?
unfortunately, has had a very shabby history in regard to
Or a
fighting
section of it.
imperialism.
A section of it.
I name it, for example, Muslim Brotherhood
Yeah.
meeting with Eisenhower in 1953
Yeah.
in his office, and the killings that takes place by this Muslim extremist, I'll call them, or I call them reactionaries, against the people of other countries, is pouring water into the dam of the imperialists.
If not that one big humanity, what force might be able to rise up against the behemoth, the United States? We've only got a few seconds left, really.
The
It's a
working
minute.
class of the United
The
States,
working class of the United States and of the world.
and the world,
Yeah,
yes.
together.
Yeah,
Together.
oppressed.
The oppressed
the
and
people who do not
poverty
have interest in maintaining and going into war and maintaining the system.
Uh-huh. So you think there's a chance of that might be manifest out of this situation?
We always
Seeds of
try.
it. We're
Business
seeing
as usual.
seeds of it. When you
Seeds
have
of it,
when you
uh-huh.
have my niece, whose own child went to Iraq and came back injured and shot himself in the head,
Yeah.
a veteran. She didn't want him to go, but do you think she's now going to say because he was a veteran and
Go
she
to
loved
another
him?
war.
No, yes, let's go. No, they're all saying no. They're all saying no, no more. It's
But
enough.
that's not enough.
I know it's
I
not.
am saying that the United States warmongers have to be confronted face to face.
Well, I don't
Mr.
know how
Kerry,
that's
I'm
gonna
ready
happen.
To sit with Mr. Kerry and call him in his face that he's a liar.
Okay, well, maybe we could arrange that. If we could, we use all our pull to get you in the same room. Ardesshir, so good to see you. Good to see you. It's a pleasure. Have the perceptions in of the Omanis. It would be like the vaudeville tea or something. But really good people who've been
Thank you.
looking at things. Happy to bring you those perceptions. Thanks a lot for coming in. Thanks for all
Harold,
the work.
you're
We'll
a
have to keep
darling
talking
for
like this.
letting us come
And
on and
thank you
air
for
our
viewing. We'll be
views.
coming back again tomorrow. So please do tune in then. And once again, thanks very much,
Conversations with
Ardesshir
Harold.
and Eleanor Ommani,
Thank you.
and for putting some perspective on this very crucial
Thank
question
you,
of the
sir.
moment.
Thank you, sir.
Okay,
you.
thank you for viewing. We'll be
Okay,
coming
I
back
appreciate
again
it.
tomorrow. Don't
Yeah.
get
No,
up
don't
yet
get up
because
yet.
you have to
Yes.
learn
I
until
know.
they roll the credits.
course.
You don't want to, give a
roll
wrong
the-
impression
Oh,
when you're
right.
running out of the studio. You mean you got more to say. You got more lies to list, right? You know.
Oh, there are more.
That's really
There are
No,
26
tell
of them.
Harold how many you got. 26. I was getting
26.
tired typing. I was like, oh my
26
God,
lies,
it's
right?
23,
Well, that's like-
24,
yeah.
25.